Hey everyone, Kelfecil here, and we're back again today to talk about a narrative game design related topic in the ttrpg field. And we're going to talk about something very juicy today. You already saw the kind of like clickbaity title, which is going to be kind of about that, but from my perspective, like some things that I think are not talked about as much when it comes to thinking about how I can be a better dungeon or game master in general. Now, I do have to make a disclaimer, as always, and the quick disclaimer is that please keep in mind that this is just the way that I approach creating and designing content, and I am by no means the end-all be-all expert when it comes on matters like, for ttrpg design or generally design stuff and whatnot. So, with that being said and out of the way, let's get right to the topic. So, how can you be a better DM? Now, I want to approach the subject from the perspective of my own experiences and the situations that I have found myself in the last 21 years of playing TTRPGs. I've played since I was 11 years old, and yes, I'm 30 years old. And basically, I've had the chance to play in different languages, in different countries, with extremely different situations and different systems and settings, and also extremely different people, which is the most important thing to remember. Despite what place you might find yourself in, you can always play on the internet, right? So you all have the chance to meet these kind of people that I played with as well. So with that out of the way, I just want to say that, again, this is my perspective on things. And I want to start by saying that I have basically played in many different languages. And I want to start by saying that because if you are not if you are a person that talks more than just English, and no shame on the people that talk only English, or know only English, there's no shame in that. Some people just put their time in something else, you might not enjoy learning other languages as much, or you might not have had the need to do so. But if you do know another language, I do suggest that you try and play TTRPG in another language. Even if you know the language, up to speaking level, normal speaking level, not being able to talk about politics and whatnot. But still, if you know how to say, I will go and hit this guy, or if you can understand how a dungeon looks like, even simple words, it's very foggy, it's very dark and things like that, it can be extremely fun to try playing a TTRPG in another language. And the reason why I'm saying that is because a lot of people actually that I know myself have played TTRPGs only in English. Even people that their mother language is not, their mother tongue is not English. And that's because they find playing in their own mother tongue kind of cringy or weird. And I understand that from a certain point of view, because, most of these things are written to be played in English, like most of the Tolkien stuff, for example, like an orc and a hobbit, you cannot really translate it perfectly in Greek or Spanish or something else, right? But at the same time, while keeping some of these elements still as they are, you can still play a game in your own language, and you will find that the feeling is somewhat different in a very cool way. It's very inspiring, very surprisingly fun, and it can actually help you play your English games even better. Now, I'm saying that because I played in English, I've played in Greek, and I've played in German, and a little bit in Dutch. And I wanted to play another language as well. I'm really looking forward to playing in Polish at some point in the future when I know a little bit better Polish. But generally, I found that the way that people people that know these languages, the way that they approach things is a little bit different. The feelings, even the way that you're surprised by something can be so much fun and so cool, to see how it's reenacted in a different language than what you usually see in English. For example, most of the actual plays that I know, but I know there are some different language, other than English, actual plays out there, but most of the actual plays that I know are, or the famous ones at least, the ones that are done in professional manner, are actually in English, which is kind of disappointing, seeing how, well, for various reasons they're not as famous, right? They don't become as famous. But anyway, moving forward, what you can take from that is basically the fact that if you play in another language, you get to take away a lot of things that you would otherwise not have realized. For example, the way that you approach combat, the way that you describe a sword slashing through flesh or something like that, right? All of these things, when you describe things in a different language, just because of all the cultural things that come into play, all the word connotations and all these things, even the fact that we say the word love and it means something different, feelings wise in a different language than our own mother tongue, that alone is a good example to show you that, if you play a game that is so close to your heart, you're actually role-playing someone that has feelings and is doing things in a real world, then you can imagine that, playing in another language is a very big deal. But anyway, that's like the simplest thing that I wanted to get out of the way. I wanted to say it first because I think it's very interesting, and if you have the chance, even if your knowledge of Spanish is not perfect, find some people out there. You know, they might be into it. They might actually be, if anything, most of the people that I've met that were helping me with learning another language were very excited to do so in all sorts of manners. So, you know, introducing a fun game like Dungeons & Dragons or some other RPG would be really cool. Which takes me to the next point, now that I said Dungeons & Dragons. Quick cultural insight here. We have a phrase in Greek, and I recently found out that it's also a phrase in Polish as well. Basically, no job is a shame. And that basically means that, you know, no matter what you do, you're actually working hard to, like, you know, provide for yourself, your family, to, like, you know, to survive. And no job is a shame as long as you're putting in the work. I found that after some extensive Google searching and whatnot, that there is no such phrase in English, and I was a little bit surprised. But that being said, I wanted to mention that I wanted to connect it to the fact that, you know, make a gap between the language and everything. See what I did there? I wanted to connect it to the fact that you should not feel bad about trying other systems. I've said this before in other videos, and I will always suggest that, you know, you should try other systems or other settings in general other than Dungeons & Dragons. And I wanted to start with it. It's not a shame to actually try something and just not like it. You could just play one session, you could be a player in somebody else's session, and just be like, at the end of it, you know, or even halfway through it, if you're not enjoying yourself, nobody's forcing you to stay there. So you could just be like, yeah, it's not my thing, you know. You could play Tales from the Loop, but you'd be like, I don't really enjoy being like, you know, a 12 years old kid that is trying to solve some silly mysteries. Well, not always silly, but you get my point. It might not be your thing. At the same time, however, very important, being able to allow yourself to put yourself in that position where you even just a player, I'm not saying like become a game master, you know, I'm not saying pick up the Tales from the Loop or like, you know, the Symbaroum book or something and learn like the new rules and everything so that you can play in it. But allow yourself to take some time, even 10-15 minutes, to read the rules, join a session, play even for just an hour, and see how it feels. I mean, as long as you're doing that in a respectful way and you're not wasting other people's time. You know, it's not just an experimentation thing. Please don't do that to people. Like, you know, don't just join sessions and just leave after an hour. Oh yeah, it's not for me. But allow yourself to learn just the basics so that you can experience it and see that, okay, you know what? That was cool. Because of that, and that, I see why they did this. I see why they did this. You will learn so much out of that. And I always say play other systems and settings so that you can get ideas. Because time and again, I'm always asked, like, how come there are so many creators, for example, for 5th edition? Well, of course, we all know that this is what sells the most, this is the most famous thing, so that's what people do. Now, I don't mind that. And I'm saying don't mind that. That's a good thing to have. You know, a lot of creativity is great. But we don't have creators out there. We have recreators. And what I mean is that we have a lot of people that DM'd or played, like, however many times, doesn't matter. Like, doesn't matter if they're an expert or not, but they played, let's say, like, you know, I DM'd three campaigns or something, right? And I decide to go and make 5th edition content. That's cool, but I'm not a creator, I'm a recreator. I'm not bringing something new to the table. And even if I make, like, let's say, new spells or something like that, I'm still recreating. I'm creating just for 5th edition with 5th edition knowledge. Now, when you talk about video games, a game designer actually sits down and studies other games. I'm challenging you, go anywhere you'd like, to any interview of other game designers from video games, and look at what they said. Look at, basically, they always say, oh yeah, we loved Zelda, we loved this, we loved the openness of, like, you know, Breath of the Wild, we loved this, and we tried to translate it into, like, you know, what we had in our mind, like the vision that we had in our mind. So basically, most of the designers out there, they kind of like take something that already exists, they become inspired by it, and they create something new, something in their own, like, you know, that they have in their minds and they want to translate into a game, into an experience. So when we're talking about TTRPGs, do you want to be a recreator? Do you want to be, even as a dungeon master, and that really goes all the way to being a dungeon master, you can be so much more interesting for your players and generally for yourself as well. Like, have all these, like, more interesting things that you're doing. And interesting from gameplay mechanics, narrative design, and all these kinds of stuff, just because you have a little bit of an idea of how other systems work. So for example, when you're playing Rime of the Frost Maiden, which is, as I've said 1,000 times, my favorite campaign, it is very well known that the book does not have great wilderness encounters and how to handle, like, the cold and the horror-esque aspect of it, even though they marketed it that way. But the rules of 5th edition are not great for it. They're just not. So if you play a horror is kind of like, system, like I can't think of one off the top of my head, but let's say Vampire the Masquerade has some great adventures. Oh, Call of Cthulhu, but fantastic example actually. If you play Call of Cthulhu, you will see how they handle the sanity and like everything that goes with it, and how the simple systems allow the players to actually feel the way that the game wants the players to feel. And that, as a game master, can be such fantastic knowledge, such a huge and absolutely useful tool when you're playing something else. So I'm not saying bring the whole system from Call of Cthulhu and put it around the Frost Maiden, but when something happens, you don't have to follow the exact rules that are in the book. You can immediately think of something in your mind, just make it up, like, on the spot, and be like, yeah, that would be way cooler, and that will make the player more engaged when I translate it, like, game mechanics wise, when I translate it this way. Now, that being said, like, as a person that does a lot of game design, like, I'm forced to do game design, and I've learned to love it over time, because when you make a ttrpg, you do a lot of game design. You have to be careful where you take inspiration from. You have to be careful, like, how you translate it. Many times I find myself, I don't want, like, saying that I don't want to just copy what I'm seeing out there. But at the same time, playing a lot of settings and systems is a fantastic way for you to make something new. Don't be a recreator, be a creator. And I know this is going to be, it's kind of like a way of, like, I'm not trying to talk bad of, like, people that make 5th edition content. But at the same time, like, we have so many people that just, like, DM'd once or twice, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna write adventures, and you can tell from the writing and the way that the adventures feel and play out. Many times I find myself constricted by the system and the elements that are in 5th edition. I want to make more, I want to make it feel more vivid, I want to make the relationship of the characters come out through, like, different systems and game mechanics. And 5th edition doesn't offer that, unfortunately. In many ways, I don't even know how to do that myself. So playing other systems gives me ideas as to how I can translate that. It might not always work, but it does give ideas. You're not stuck on the 5th edition stuff. So yeah, that's a way for you to be a better DM for sure. That's my controversial opinion when it comes to, like, giving advice on how to be a better DM. I'd say first, try playing other systems and settings as well. Not even DMing, again, like, not even DMing or anything, just play. There's tons of fantastic people out there that have put in the work, they love those other systems and adventures and stories and all this stuff, and they would love to have you as a player if you're just interested in playing. Like, there's tons of GMs out there, like, that are hungry for players that are interested in that kind of stuff. So anyway, moving on, I wanted to say that, last but not least, you should be a player. You should allow yourself to be a player. And I'm saying that because I have played quite a few times. I'm still, like, the kind of person that most of the times DMs or GMs, but I force myself, I really do, to try and find groups, even if they are not groups that, I end up sticking with for a longer time because, maybe our characters don't align, or, like, as people we don't align and whatnot, our personalities and whatnot. But at the same time, I try to force myself to be a player and try to enjoy myself as a player as well, because I've met so many DMs and GMs that just, like, feel the need that they always need to be in control. I read, like, almost daily, especially from recreators, oh yeah, I'm the always DM kind of person. Well, don't be. Just be a player. Force yourself to be a player. Many of the successful DMs that we know spend just as much time, like, I mean, online, like big names and whatnot. They spend just as much time being players in other people's campaigns, and they bring out the same amount of love that they bring out as GMs as players too. And I just meet so many people that, like, it almost feels selfish at this point, like, to basically be doing this kind of thing, because if you're just DMing for the sake of just having control, then what's the point? Like, it's ironic because you're making a game for other people to enjoy. If you in the end up making this game just for yourself to, like, have control, like, over and over again, just being the GM every time, you're not allowing yourself to, like, feel as part of the group. You need to be doing it for your friends. That's, like, one of the most, like, selfless acts. Like, playing TTRPGs as a game master is one of the most selfless acts I know out there, because you put in so much time reading so many books, preparing so many things in order to provide an experience for your friends, like, or even strangers on the internet. That's why a lot of people actually charge for this thing as well, So, like, when they do it, I mean, professionally. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like the power-hungry DM trope in order to, like, be selfish. I'm not saying you need to be power-hungry, but you do see it a lot of times that people do end up, like, doing it for that reason. But yeah, I mean, just try to be a player. And when you're a player, you end up realizing that, hey, it's not just about that. I can trust other people to take control of the world as well. And as a player, even if you're not playing with along the people that you will be DMing for, you end up seeing how people react to certain things. Even if something good happens or bad, like, you will still be able to get an example of like, okay, this is how this DM handled it. Maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way. You learn something from it. And as a player, you have a different perspective. If you're always DMing, which I know it's difficult to find, like, you know, a good DM to like be a player to, but still try it. Because if you're always DMing, you're never gonna have the perspective, and you're kind of stuck in that world of like seeing everything from above, and you do not get the same feeling. You do not get to fully understand the players. Even again, if these are not the same people that you're gonna be playing with. They're still people. And last but not least, like, I do want to make the disclaimer that obviously every table is different. Like, the dynamics of, like, you know, different people are different from like table to table. So please take all of this again with a pinch of salt, and like, please see these things from your own perspective as you play with your friends or people on the internet or whatever. So, not that people on the internet can be your friends, but anyway, yeah, but for example, my tables can be quite different, like, from time to time. I play with a lot of people online that are from different countries, so I need to adjust to things. And I have had issues, let's say, where I had to adjust things, like, you know, from the usual way that I did things. So yeah, please consider yourself as a human being that is at the table with other people. You're not just the person controlling the world. Allow yourself to be a player. Allow yourself to like learn other things. Allow yourself to be influenced. Expand your horizons. Anyway, that is my, let's say, my best top 3 advice. Maybe I should have named it like that. Nah, the clickbait title is fine. But anyway, with that being said, that's what I wanted to talk about for today. That's pretty much all of it. If you liked the video, please leave a like by clicking the little button, the little thumbs up button below the video. That really helps a lot. And if you enjoy the content, I will be posting 1 to 2 videos a week. So consider subscribing if you want to stay up to date and be notified when new videos come up. And I also, of course, have a Patreon if you want to support me. There's gazillions of releases already on there, with more coming every month. And yeah, I will catch you on the next video where we design even more TTRPG design stuff, be it game, narrative, or we talk about an adventure or something. There is a plan to actually introduce some board game designs talks as well, which I really love. So we'll see about that in the future. For now, we want to focus on TTRPG stuff and do it like a little bit more frequently. So anyway, until next time, may Starlight guide your way, my friends, and see you!